let's begin. Now, in the last class, we had discussed about ADO.NET, and we had seen there are two types of architecture. And in this class, I'm going to do one type of architecture, that is connected architecture, and I'm going to do CRUD operation with connected architecture of ADO.NET. First of all, let me do one thing. Let me create a project, and while it is getting created and while it's getting set up, I'll be revising what we saw in the last class. Okay, so let me create a new project, and let's choose ASP.NET Web Application, which belongs to .NET Framework. And let's go next. Since I've already chosen that previously, it was there in the recently used templates. Otherwise, you should search and get one. Okay, so I'm going to name this project as Connected ADO. All right, this is going to be a full-fledged project, which is not an empty one. It's just a full ASP.NET web application. Okay, so let's create one. It'll ask you one more dialog in which you'll have to choose what kind of ASP.NET web application would you like to create. An empty one, a web forms one, an MVC one. I'm going to choose web forms because I want a template. I don't want to do the design part of it and add bootstrap and jQuery and etc. etc. Whereas if it is an empty project, you will have to add everything on your own, like bootstrap, jQuery, any extra CSS, everything you will have to add, and you will have to create your own master page and stuff. But if you choose web forms, all those things will be already there for you. You can just directly start working with a predefined template. Okay, so let me just choose with web forms and then click on create. Okay, so while the project is getting created, let's just revise what we saw in the last class. ADO.NET is ActiveX data object from .NET Framework, which is basically a mechanism by which you connect two databases from the .NET Framework. Okay, in our case, we are choosing ASP.NET, which is a web application from .NET Framework. From web application, how do you connect to various databases? Okay, so please note, towards all my classes, I'll be using only one what do you call database architecture, or only one database. I'm going to use SQL server. Okay, SQL server database. One second. Why not MVC? Why should I use MVC now? The syllabus is teaching that MVC is at 5th unit. So I'll take, I've already told this, if you have listened, MVC will be taken towards the 5th unit. First, I'll have to take ASP.NET, and once we finish that only I can move to MVC. If I start with MVC now, you will not be able to follow, is what I feel. If you're able to follow, please do it on your own. Okay, so that is one. Let's move on. And in the ADO.NET architecture, we have two different architectures available inside ADO.NET, which is connected and disconnected. So if you notice that I've connected is the regular way. Every other technology has only one way, which is connected architecture. Okay, but ASP.NET gives disconnected architecture through a concept of XML. Okay, so that is what we are going to see second. The first one, what we are going to see, is somewhat similar to what we had done with JDBC. Okay, that's why I'm going to take connected first, because these are something which we already know. So let's start. First of all, let me just see that, let me close this. What is open? This is just an overview. I can close this. I'll go to Solution Explorer. And if you see here in the Solution Explorer, I have almost everything which is required set up already there. Okay, there is a master page, site.master, and there is an about page, there is a contact page, there is a default.aspx page. So everything is already there. I just need to add new pages to it. Okay, so before I start with the project itself, please note our target today is to connect to a database and then perform some important operations like retrieving, inserting, updating, and deleting. All right, so I'll try to complete that as much as possible in this class. Otherwise, we'll continue in the next class. So what I'm going to do today is, first, you need to understand the steps what are involved in creating a database and accessing that database and etc. So let me just revise what we had seen in connected architecture and disconnected architecture. I'll just give you a quick revision of the keywords what we have discussed in connected and what are the keywords we have in disconnected. In both these architectures, one keyword is common. If you remember, it is connection. It doesn't matter whether you're using a desktop or a laptop, power supply is essential. So first one, like that here, whether connected or disconnected architecture, your supply of data, the connection to the data source is compulsory. So SQL, in specifically here, I'm going to use SQL Server, guys. Please understand, the syllabus only talks about SQL Server, and because it's a Microsoft technology. But towards the end, once I've finished everything, I'll show you how to connect same the .NET. Only one place you have to change from one ASP.NET to MySQL or Microsoft SQL or Oracle, whatever you want to connect. Okay, so in all these classes, what I'm going to take right now, I'm going to use SQL Server database only. Okay, I'll repeat it for people who have not listened. Savio, are you listening? Okay, I'm going to take only SQL Server right now. The reason is because that's the only thing which is supported by Microsoft directly. The remaining things require a separate plugin. We'll be adding it later. So I'll show how to connect to different databases in later classes. In all these classes where we are explaining CRUD operation, I am going to use SQL Server database only. And for your exams also, you will be asked to use SQL Server database file only. All right, so let's keep that clear. So let's move on. Now, first what I'm going to do, I have a project ready. Before I write or create forms in which I'm going to create, retrieve, insert, update, delete, all those things. First, what we will do is we will first add a database. Okay. Now, please note, .NET gives everything within that same architecture. You need not open another, like for example, if you're working with NetBeans, and we did JDBC last time. I think most of us used Derby, some of us used MySQL. Okay, so when you use MySQL, you have to open a browser, PHP MyAdmin, and then access MySQL through it. Okay, so that is a separate entity, and NetBeans had a separate your Java project, and then you both connected. But then when it comes to ASP.NET or in .NET framework, everything can be comprehensive. It can be kept in the same IDE itself. Let's see how to do that. First thing what I'm going to do is create a database. Okay. Now, before I proceed with that, one more thing, just a quick revision. If you remember, there is a file called Access. In Microsoft Office, when you install, there is a particular thing called Microsoft Access. Okay, that is also like a small relational database, but it is a file. Okay, I'm repeating it again. Microsoft Access is also a relational database, but it is a file-based database. Okay, which means you can see the created file. When you create a Microsoft Access database, you can see the file, maybe an MDB or ACCDB. You will see that file in your system. I'll show that in another class. Okay, and when it comes to MySQL or Oracle, you don't see a file. They are server based. Okay, you log into that server, you do all operations, but you can never physically see where that file is located, where your data is actually stored. You cannot normally access it in Oracle or MySQL. Okay, for all these databases, they are server based. Access is a file based. But what about Microsoft SQL? Microsoft SQL Server has both. It allows you to access it like a server as well as a database file. Okay. In our case, for easiness, because I don't want you to install SQL Server also once again, we will use file because the concept is same. Only thing is the connection string will be a little bit different. That's all. No other difference. So let's create, let me right click on the project. Please do follow. This step is going to be what I'm taking in the beginning is going to be same for all your database related operations in this semester. Okay. I'm going to right click on the project name and click on add, and I'm going to say new item. I'm repeating it again. Right click, add, new item. Okay. And in this new item, I guess you can see the templates which are available. Please note, I'm looking for not a web template, not a server template, because this is SQL Server. I don't want a server. Basically, I want a file. So I'm going to choose data as the option here on the left hand side. And then you see here, there are a lot of things. Out of that, I have one thing called SQL Server Database. Okay, I wanted to notice that, guys. I've chosen a template, added a new item in Visual C#, data, and then I'm coming here to SQL Server Database. If you notice at the bottom, it says database1.mdf, Microsoft data file or data format. Okay, so it's MDF is the Microsoft SQL Server's database file. I hope we can get the full form there. Microsoft SQL Server's database file, MDF. So I'm going to name this with the database name. So let's do the typical thing. What we normally do is student DB, right? So let's start with, I'll name it as student DB. This is somewhat similar to how we have if you're using MySQL, you first create a database, then inside the database you create some tables. In tables you'll create columns and then you'll add rows. That's how our normal database structure looks like, right? So we have a database created. Inside the data, one database can hold n number of tables, and one table can hold n number of columns. Okay, and it goes on like that. So first, what I'm creating, the file name is nothing but the database name. So what I've created is a database. Inside this database file, I can have n number of tables. Okay, so for one project I can have one database file, and I can put all data tables which are required for that particular project inside that one file itself. The advantage of using that file is that I can copy this project from my laptop and put it in your laptop and still work it, because it's not a server based file, it's a location or the file. Okay, it's not a server, which means if it is a server, SQL server means you have to import SQL, export SQL, and then all those things. But when it comes to database file, just copy the file and put it there, and the path you have to set, that's it. And it will start working. That's one more advantage. So I'm going to use, I've just put it as studentdb.mdf. Okay, please note, for some of you, this might have an error saying time dot and all. Just try it once again, it will work. Okay, so I'm going to click on add. And here, I wanted to notice this. When I clicked on add, Microsoft Visual Studio puts a message. Please do read that. You'll understand what it is trying to say. Okay, you are trying to add a special type of file. .mdf. Okay, in general, to use this type of item in your site, you should place it in app_data folder. Do you want us to place it in that folder? Normally we should give yes. Okay, please understand, when you add this database file to your project structure, ASP.NET understands that it is a database file. So it's asking, shall I put it inside a folder called app_data, in which all the data related to that particular app is stored. So we'll normally say yes. Okay, so once you have done that, and if the timeout error does not come, it should get added here. If at all you get a timeout error, please do try it once again. Okay, sometimes the timeout may be based on your system speed. Okay, so if it doesn't react before like 10 seconds or something, it will throw that timeout error. So if at all that error comes, please do remember to try it once again. After some time, try it once again, it might add. Okay, so here in app_data folder, there is a database called studentdb.mdf. Okay, you can ignore that LDF, it's just a log. Okay, but then you have, this is my database. So how do I access or see, how do I create tables and all those things? It's very simple. Okay, so this is my solution explorer. I wanted to notice the name which I've said. This is my solution explorer under which my databases or project is located. On the left hand side, you will have something called server explorer. I hope you guys can see this. Okay, there is something called server explorer. Let me click on it. Okay, if you open the server explorer, there is one thing called data connections. Inside data connections, your newly added database should be reflected. By default, in empty projects, you will not find this. But since I have added a database already right now in my project, it is showing. It is showing X mark because you have not connected. Once you refresh, it will go off. Now it's connected and it is ready. So let's open this up and you will see all these things. Typically, what and all can be stored in a relational database? Tables, views, stored procedures, functions, types, assemblies, etc. Okay, all these things are part of a database which we do not see. We only see the tables in the database normally. Okay, but let's create. So I'm going to focus on only table, and I'm going to create a simple table just for understanding how CRUD operations work. Okay, so here if you see tables is there. If you open that, nothing is there because I just created a database, no tables have been created. So how do I create? Right click on the tables folder and just say add new table. Okay. Guys, I'll not repeat it much times, but then I think you can go and visit the video once again to see what this procedure is. It's very important that you guys understand this, because what I'm doing till now, or till I create the data table, whatever is done will be common for all CRUD operations, link to SQL or entity framework, or when I'm using ADO.NET, anything for that sake. Okay, so let's create a new table. So add new table. Once you do that, this design surface will come up. Okay, this is the database design surface. So the design surface will come up. In that case, you will see the SQL query at the bottom and the table structure on the top. Okay, once it loads, you can see that, but please note, this is more important for us. This is the query which will create your table. On top, what you see is the database or the table structure. Okay, this is easier for us to manipulate than typing the entire code once again in SQL. Right, so let's do that here. I am going to create a simple table for student. Okay, so first thing I need to do is to make sure I give the table a name. All right, so for that, do not use this. Let's use here only. Here there's a word called table. Please do remember to remove this word. Otherwise, your table will be named as table, which is kind of confusing later. Okay, never forget to change this. You have created a database name, that is studentdb.mdf. Okay, and next one is the table name. Table name comes inside the query. So I'm going to just put it as tbl student details. And once I do that, you can see that it is reflected here. Database object dot tbl student details. This is the design structure. Okay, so now let's start. I hope you got it. First database, second table name. Then see, by default there is already one thing called ID and it is already been marked as primary key. Code also you can see ID int not null primary key. Okay, it's done. So let me just change the word from ID to, I'll just put it as student underscore ID. Alright, so let's create another column. I'm going to put student underscore name. Student name, what is the data type? Data type, there is a list. You can choose from that list. So let me choose varchar. Okay, please be careful of the size what you are giving. Varchar, let me just put 150. So 150 student name, that is done. Should I allow null in that value? No, do not allow null. Student name cannot be blank, null. Okay, so next one, I'll put student underscore course. Okay, that also is a varchar, but 50 is fine. Allow null? No. Next one, let me say student underscore year of joining. Okay, that will let it be an integer. That's all. Allow null? No. This is what I did in the table design. If you see the code which is generated for that, you can see it is SQL which we normally write. Okay, it is generated now. Can you see that? Create table in the database, tbl student details, student underscore ID which is int not null primary key. Student underscore name varchar 150 not null. Student underscore course varchar 50 not null. Year of joining is int not null. So I've created a simple table, but please note what you have done is just temporarily stored. You can see that star, it means that it has not been saved. It's not updated yet. Okay. So before I proceed to click on update, this is the this is the place where you update and this table gets written into the database. But before that, let's say what should I do right now? Normally when we create in MySQL, we create something called auto increment. We create auto increment column. This integer normally we keep it as auto increment. Okay, so you have a choice in MySQL. No, even in SQLite you have that auto increment option. But in Oracle there is no such thing as auto increment. I hope you guys remember that. Okay, so in Oracle we don't have auto increment. We'll have to write a code extra to make sure that it becomes that auto increment thing. But when it comes to Microsoft SQL, there is auto increment. Only one difference is they do not call it as auto increment. I hope you follow. All right. So we do not call it as auto increment. All right. So what we call it as, let me just right click on this particular column and then go to its properties. I hope you follow right now. Because this column, it's giving me remove primary key. Okay. Can you zoom out a little? Okay. Why? Is it not visible? Is this fine now? Yes. Okay. Fine. I'll repeat it once again in the next project. Okay, so let's just continue here in that student ID. I'm going to right click on the student ID and then say go to its properties. So let me go to its property and it will be name value pair because properties as it is. Okay, so in this one, first one is that there are a lot of properties for that particular column. I am only looking for one thing called identity specification. Please remember the word identity. It is similar or synonym to MySQL's auto increment. Okay, guys, please do remember this. When it comes to MySQL and SQLite, okay, in some of those databases or based on that kind of database, you will have something called auto increment, which will increment the value which is inserted to that particular column every time by 1. Okay, but in Oracle, there is no such thing inbuilt. Inbuilt auto increment keyword is not there. And there is no concept like that. You will have to create your own function. when it comes to Microsoft SQL, that concept exists, but the name is not auto increment. The name is identity. Please remember, this is the one which is identity. I hope this is clear even if I zoomed out. Okay, so is identity. You can read the specification here. It specifies whether the column is the identity column for the table. That's all. And you can, once you make it true, please note right now it's false. I'm making it true. The increment number by default, it starts with 1. Seed is 1. Starting is 1 and it will increment by 1. Now, what if I want your register numbers to be generated every time you add? I'll just put 191901. Let's say that this is the register number which I'm starting. Okay, so this is the seed starting number. The first record you insert will have the seed which is 191901. And every time you insert a new record, one number, 1 will be added or 1 will be incremented to this number of identity seed. I guess you guys understood this. All right, so let me repeat it once again. The first column in my table is student underscore ID, which is data type of integer. And it is by default marked as primary key. Okay, so even though it is primary key, I would like to make it as auto increment. There is no keyword called auto increment in Microsoft SQL Server. So what we do is we give that column as is identity. Okay, the moment you make it false, these two will go away. If it is not identity, it will be primary key, but you will have to give the number. But if I make it as true, then it starts with 1, okay, and increments it by 1 every time. Okay, I hope this is clear to you guys. So with that, let me just keep it as 1 only, or let me just keep it as, let's start with 1919 or 191701. This will be the identity seed, which means the starting number. The first record you insert will be marked as 191701. The next record you insert will be incremented by 1, which will be 191702. I hope you follow. All right, this is identity. And here the code is generated accordingly. Now, once you are satisfied with the table structure, what you have given, then go click on update. I'll show this part. Please note, this is just above your table. There's one word called update. Let's click on that. What the system will do is it will prepare your SQL statement. Everything is ready. And then all you need to do is to click on this button called update database. Okay, it has created an update preview. It has created an SQL statement according to that. And then just click on update statement. Done. So your update is ready and your program is done. Once it is done, the update is done. How do I verify whether it is done and how it is proper? Okay, again, go back to Server Explorer. Same place, Server Explorer. Okay, now the tables part, just right click and then say refresh. You should see the new table which you just created. Okay, so let me right click on that and then say open. Okay, or this is the table definition which is already open. You can just say show table data. Okay, this is the table which we recently created. Right click and then say show table data. When you do that, it will open something like this. Okay, here please note all the columns are right now showing null because you have not inserted anything new. Okay, so this column you cannot edit because it is auto increment. Okay, all you need to do is give the name of the student, course of the student, year of join of the student. It should work. So let me just give Rajesh, course is MCA, year of joining 2017. Okay, the moment I come to the next column, this ID will be generated. I hope you can see. Let me just zoom it for a minute. 191701. This is my identity seed starting number. Okay, the next value if I add as Prakash, let's say MSc ST, let's say 2018. Incremented by 1, you get the next ID and it goes on like this. Okay, so this is your way of inserting a value through the database itself. Okay, this is not using CRUD, guys. This is just directly I'm working with the database. This is not the scenario. We'll have to manipulate it through our ASP.NET code. Remember that. Okay, so till this, I hope it is clear. Right, this is how you create a database and table, and you can create any number of tables also. Okay, you can right click and just add a new table and then add your own record, whatever you want to do. Okay, so it's as simple as creating like, it doesn't require much of coding knowledge. Just create a new table like this. That's all. Okay, so I hope there is no question with this. If there is anything, please do ask. I'll answer that and then proceed. Do you have any questions, guys, so far? Okay, I assume there is nothing. So let's move on. I'll be doing this once again for the next program also. Okay, so if you have not followed in this class, next class you will have to follow, or just look at the video once again and get accustomed to this particular way of creating a table and data. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's use, right now I have a database. Okay, let me close all these things. Okay, let me only keep the table data here. Let me go to Solution Explorer. Please note, in my Solution Explorer, my project files are here. Database file is here. Okay, so it's very simple. My database is available inside the same project as mine. It's not kept somewhere in an unknown location. So I am very much aware of where it is. Okay, that's it. Now let's take a little bit more further. Let's create a file through which I insert a record. Okay, please note, I'm going to insert one student record using ASP.NET. I hope you follow. Right now, it's very easy for you to just click and add data, but this is not what the user will be seeing. This is only for the developer. What the user will see is a web page. In that web page, he'll be giving his data, and once he clicks on submit, the data should be added to this particular table. So how do I do that? For that, let's create an ASP.NET web page. Okay, so let me just right click on my project, add a new item. Let's click on web and choose web form with the master page. Okay, I think by now you're familiar with what is a web form with master page and just a simple web form. Okay, so you can see that here in web forms there are two: normal web form with the master page. With the master page, because I already have a project which has a template for site.master. So I'm going to just choose web form with the master page, and let me name it as insert or register student, something like that. You can give the name. I'm giving the word as insert and then click on add. When I do that, it asks me which is the master page, because I said web form with the master page. Let me just choose site.master and click on OK. That's all I'm doing. Okay, if you go to the design, the skeleton will already be there, where the header is there, the footer is there, everything is already there. I just need to put the content. Okay, remember this. So let me just first put a label saying that add a new student or something like that. So let me just double click. I'll put a label there. Okay, let me go to its properties, and I'm not going to give the ID, just the text. I'm going to change it as add a new student. Okay, you can increase the font size, the color and all those things. I leave it up to you guys. Okay, so let me just give a larger one. Done. So I put a label. After that, I want a table so that it be structured. So let me just use a HTML table. Okay, I put add a new student. I put a HTML table. Now, please note, since I've chosen a table here, I can go to its properties and see this is HTML properties. Okay, so in HTML property, there is a property called class, or you can go and type it in the code also. Instead of going to the code, I'm just typing it here. Since it's bootstrap enabled, I'm just going to put table hyphen bordered, or you can also put extra, like if you whatever you remember from the last semester. Okay, you can put all these operations, CSS class of bootstrap to that class property of your HTML table. Okay, now let's move on. I have table. Let me just go to the code. Let's show you how the code is located right now. The code will look something like this. Okay, so here I put it in the wrong place. The class should be here in the table. Okay, let me put it in here. Class of this table is table hyphen bordered. Done. Right, now let me go to design. You'll see the table is right now clear with the 3 rows and 3 columns. All right, so in the meantime, what I've done was just to take 3 values from the user. Let me just do it once again. So I'll just say enter student name, choose a course, enter year of joining. All right, so this side I'm going to put the data once again, text box, and the next one was a drop down. The third one is a text box again. In the fourth one, I added a button. So let me just put a button there. And now let me put the operations, the CSS control. So let me just choose all the three and apply one class which is called form-control, which will make it like a bootstrap control. The last one is the button. Let me change that also. CSS class btn hyphen success. Done. So now let's move on. Let's take the first control. Let me name it appropriately. So first one is going to be txt name. Okay. Second one is a drop down list which is going to hold the items. So let me just add items. First one I'm going to keep it as select. Okay, second one I'm going to add the courses, the actual values. So first one I'm MCA. I'm going to add second one MSc ST, and the third one let me add MSc Big Data Analytics. Okay, so I've put three courses. They have to choose one from that, and the third one is the text box. Let me just go back and name it as TXTYOJ, the year of joining. And one more thing extra I'm going to do here is the type, the text mode. I'll change it to number, because I know that I'm expecting only number there. That's not a validation, guys. Please note that's just HTML file. Okay, but I want you to apply appropriate validations as it is required for that particular control. Okay, so please don't forget that. And then let's go to the last one, button. I'll name it as btn insert the ID. Okay, but in the text I'll just say register, or I'll just say add student. Done. So I have a form which has basically asking the user to enter a name, enter a course, or choose a course, and then enter a year of joining. That's all. When you click on add, what I want to do is I want to ask ASP.NET to connect to the database using ADO.NET and pass this data, whatever the user has entered, to the database so that it can be entered. That's my target. Okay, so let's do that at least today. So what I'll do is right now, I guess, guys, I think till this form designing and creating a form and taking input from the user, I need not explain to you much because we are very much familiar with it by doing so much of programs. So one I'm going to do right now is I'm going to just, when you click on this button, I want some program to happen. Okay, whatever else you want to happen with this particular form can be done without even helping or without even using C#. Okay, but adding this data to the database, you require C#. So that time I'll double click on this button. Okay, so the double click on the button creates this particular method in this particular class called insert. It's nothing but my file name insert.aspx. Okay, so inside that class, as soon as the page loads, there is a method created. Nothing has been written so far. Right now, I don't require it. And when you click on the submit button, when you click on the insert button, what do you want me to do? I want you to insert, take the value. Please note, let's put it in words. I wanted to take the values what the user has entered in that form and pass it to the database. Okay, in that middle person would be ADO.NET. All right. So in order to start using ADO.NET, if you remember the previous class, I said there are some specific namespaces involved. Since I am using connected architecture and I'm going to use SQL Server database, I'm going to import one package called using system.data.sql client. Please remember this namespace. This is the namespace what I'm going to use. Using system.data.sql client. Okay, remember this. This is the important namespace which is required for this operation. Okay. Now let's come into the block of code. When will this block of code be called? This block of code will be called only when you click on this button called add student. Okay, the moment you click on this button, this block of code should be called. That's what I'm going to do. So as soon as you click on the button, what do you want me to do? I wanted to collect all the three data which the user has given into C#. How do I do that? Let's create some string based on whatever data they have given. So let me say string s name, student name is equal to, from where will I get it? Txt name, that's the control name, dot text, whatever the user has entered in that text box. Now please note, if you don't have validation and you clicked on submit by just opening this form, you will get empty. Blank null will be stored in sname, which is wrong, which means you have to do validations appropriately. Because of the lack of time, I'm not doing it. Okay, so I guess you guys know how to do validation by now. I hope you would have practiced it. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. I've got the name from the user. Second one is a course, which is also a string. So I'll say string course is equal to, it is there in the drop down list. I guess I did not name it, so let me just name it. I'll click on the drop down list, go to its property. I'll name it as DDL courses, drop down list of courses. That's all. Okay, so that's all I've done. Nothing else I'm adding there. Let me come back here. And please note, when you put a validation, required field validator here for the drop down list, initial value should be select. So that select is not considered. And any one of the value like MCA, MSc, ST or big data will be considered. Okay, so remember that. Let's go back and I'll call DDL. Now I have courses dot selected value, whatever you have selected. Please note, selected value returns string. You can see here it returns a string, which means I can directly store it. What if I'm looking for a number? You'll have to parse the selected value, then store it in a value. Okay, so here last one is a year of joining, that I'm looking as an integer itself. So I'm going to say int yoj is equal to int dot parse. Why am I parsing? Because that year of joining is coming from a text box, txt yoj dot text, which is again returning a string. So I need to parse it into an integer and store it there. So I've got all the three values from the user. Okay, I guess till this it's clear. What is my next step? Okay, so before I proceed to the database query or database code, I want you to recollect what we had studied in JDBC. Okay, in JDBC, if you remember, we had three important words. First one is loading the driver. After that, you create a connection. Third one is you create a statement. Okay, please remember all these things. After creating a statement, you will not use result set unless there is a retrieve operation. Okay, I'm going to correlate that to this, guys. So recollect what we did in JDBC. We loaded the driver, we created a connection, we created a statement, and if it is insert, update or delete, we don't use a result set. We use a result set only for retrieval operations. What I am doing right now is not a retrieval operation, which means I do not require a reader. Okay, the keyword is reader, but there it is called result set. Remember that. Okay, now, so what is required for me? Okay, so all I need here is the connection, and then I have to issue a command. That's all. Okay, so let's do that. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a connection. So how do I create a connection? I'm going to write this as a comment, create a connection. Connection to what? I want you to connect this to SQL database. So I'm going to create a class called SQL connection. I want you to notice this, guys. SQL connection is the class which is coming from system.data.sql client.sql connection. I hope you understood why I added this namespace on top. Okay, it's SQL connection. It represents an open connection to an SQL server database. I hope you remember this. Okay, so I'm going to put SQL connection. Okay, I hope the code is clear. Visible. Okay, so let me proceed. I'll just say SQL. I'll just name it as con. Okay, so that we'll follow what we have done in the last semester. You got suggestions, you can use any of those. Since it is a class, you cannot access it directly. You'll have to create a new object. So I'm going to say new SQL connection. Okay, please remember SQL connection. Okay, so that is very, very important that I've created a new SQL connection. Now, if you remember in JDBC, we created one line for just loading the driver. Okay, here that part is not required because you are actually talking to Microsoft technologies, both are. So which means I need not bother about loading the driver. That can be done in one line itself. The connection will automatically take care of that. So that step I'm ignoring. Now what I'm doing is creating a connection. Okay, in order to create a connection, if you remember, we created something with double quotes. We will tell where that database is located. Okay, just revise JDBC code, you'll understand. In the connection with the driver manager dot get connection, within brackets, we write three parameters. Number one, where the database is located. If you are using MySQL, you will give 127 or localhost : / okay, you will give a particular IP address where you can find the SQL database, 1527, something like that you will be giving. Okay, but when it comes to this, again, username, password, all those things will be passed in that particular connection statement itself. So you can see that there are three constructors available there. Let me show you what is the second one. The second constructor, first constructor is blank, nothing is passed. Second constructor is you have to pass the connection string. Okay, the connection used to open the SQL server database, that has to be passed. What is the third one? is third one is with credential. If at all you have a username and password. Right now I did not give username and password for that database, so I don't require it. So all I need to do is within double quotes I need to pass the connection string. Where will I get the connection string from? From the database itself. Let's go to Server Explorer. Okay, and let's choose this MDF file, right click on it and go to its properties. I'm repeating it again. Server Explorer, studentdb.mdf. Let's right click on it, go to its properties. When you go to its property, you will have a property called connection string. I hope you can see that. Okay, there is something called connection string. Let's just copy everything from there and paste it here. Okay, before I paste it there, I want you to understand, if you write double quotes within double quotes, it will not be evaluated. Remember that. Okay, now I'll show you why. Let me just paste it. Okay, so when I pasted it, it is, let's just read that. Data source is equal to local db slash mssql local db colon attach db file name, and then they've given a big file name where that file is located. This is absolute path, guys, which is not recommended. I'll change it to relative path shortly, but right now let's keep it as it is. Okay, so here this space should be removed and the slash should be escaped, otherwise it will not work. Okay, all these issues are there. And also you started with a double quote here, and inside that there's one more double quote, which is kind of an error. So if it is inside double quote, it's better to use single quote. So let me just put single quote here, also a single quote here, so that inside that there will not be any issues. Now wherever the underline is coming, if you notice, it's because you have not escaped that escape character. Okay, so in .NET you have another way of fixing this problem. All right, how do I fix this, all these slash issues? Just put an at before the double quote starts. Done. .NET automatically understands that following wherever you find slashes, it should be ignored. Okay, this is not the technical definition, but for us right now to understand, please keep it like that. Okay, so I put at before the double quote starts, not here. Before the double quote starts, I put at, so that the system understands this as a connection string and also ignores all that slash problems. Okay, now C colon, there should not be a space, but there is a space included because of the copy paste thing we did. Never give that space. It should be like this. This is a proper path. C colon slash users slash your name slash source, wherever the file is located. Okay, that file. I'll change that to relative path in another class. Right now, let me keep it as it is. So there is no error right now. I can proceed to the next step. What is the next step? Open the connection. I hope you follow. All right. So I've opened the connection. First step. What is the second step? Okay, please note, guys, what I've done so far is I've just created a connection and opened it. Okay, so how do I create a connection? Create this class, okay, an object of that class. And when you create that object of that class, pass a parameter as the connection string, which I copy pasted from my Server Explorer. That's all. Okay, revisit the video so for that you can slowly see what I have done. Okay, let me proceed. Now what I need to do next is I need to issue a command, an SQL command. So let's create an SQL command. Let me name it as cmd is equal to new SQL command. Okay. Now, if you remember in the last JDBC also, I told this every line is connected to each other. The first line you write class.forName. That is loading the driver. Second line you write connection space con is equal to driver manager dot get connection. And the next line you say statement is equal to con dot create statement. I hope you follow. Every line was connected to each other. Here also connection is created. Now connection is done. Connection is the the path in which you're going to execute the command. So command is dependent on connection. You can see that in the second line here, the third parameter here, I am going to pass number one SQL. Also you need to tell where to execute that SQL. Okay, because this is a new object which we are creating. This is a totally different one from this one. So you, in order to connect these two people, first one you should tell what is the query. So I'm going to put double quote. That will be my SQL query. Whatever SQL query is there, you should pass it there. Second one, where do you want to execute it? Okay, you want to execute it on this connection object. This should be your code. Please remember this. Okay, so SQL command space, whatever object name you want to give, equal to new SQL command. And then you need to pass two parameters. Let me tell you what are those two parameters. One, what command to execute. Let me put it in other words. What SQL command do you want me to execute? That you should put it within double quotes. Where do you want to execute it? On top of this connection. That's all. So what do you want to execute? Where do you want to execute? Remember that. Okay. So what do you want to execute here? I want to execute an insert query. So let me type that insert into TBL. I think it's student details or something. Check the table name, and I'm going to insert only 3 columns. The first column is auto increment. So I'm going to put, it's going to be a long one. Just do follow. Okay. So I'm going to say student underscore name. I'm going to enter student underscore course, second one, student underscore YOJ, year of joining. I'm going to insert these 3 records. Please note, whatever comes inside double quote is SQL. Whatever comes outside double quote is C#. Okay, remember that. Now let me proceed. I'll say values, and then let me open the bracket. Since it's a name, you need single quote. I hope you follow. Name is string or varchar. So let me start single quote. But where is that name coming from? It is coming from C#. So let me concatenate, stop there, double quote there, concatenate that with S name, which I just took from the user. Okay. Let me put it as S name, and let me concatenate that, and let's close that single quote. Let's put a comma, and let's open a single quote again because I'm using a course, and concatenate that with course what the user has entered. Let me concatenate that again, close that course. Next one is a number, so I don't require a single quote. I can directly close that double quote and call the year of joining. Okay, after that I can put a double quote and close the bracket which I opened for insert values, and my work here is done. I guess this part will be easy for people who have done this JDBC properly. So same thing here, no big difference. There it was Java, here it was C#. That's it. Okay, so insert into table name, 3 columns I have given, values, and then given name within single quote, and then comma, course within single quote. Okay, and then year of joining is an integer, so single quote is not required, but this bracket which I opened here, I've closed it here. With that, my query is ready. Okay, it doesn't mean that it will get executed. I've just created this command and kept it there. Okay, this object has just been initialized, not been called or used anywhere. Okay, so if you remember how we wrote the execute command or execute update in JDBC, same thing here. If you call execute query, it will return a result set. If you call execute update, it will return a number. That number tells how many rows were affected by that query. Same thing here. I'm going to call if cmd, that command dot. Now I'm asking it to execute. Okay, I'm looking for a word. It is not a query. Please remember there we use the word update, execute query and execute update. Here it is very simple, execute query, execute non-query. Whichever is not a query. What is not a query? Insert, update, delete. These are not queries. They are operations. So we call it as non-query. Okay. Please remember we say execute non-query, which is nothing which is except for queries. Alright. So whatever is not a query like insert, update and delete are called as non-queries. And when you execute that non-query, please note what is returned. Okay. It returns an int. Please note executes a transact SQL statement against the connection and returns the number of rows which got affected. I hope you follow. In my query, I am expecting that number of rows to be 1. At least 1 row should be inserted. So I'm going to say greater than 0. If command dot execute non-query, which returns greater than 0, at least 1, then I'll just say response dot write. Right now I'm putting response dot write. Later I'll make it into a JavaScript alert or something like that. I'll just say inserted successfully. Done. With this, our code for insert is done with respect to .NET. Connection, command, execute non-query, and you've got the output. Okay, that's it. With this, we will stop for today. Okay, if you have any questions, please do ask.